I'm just going to take a minute to introduce our guest tonight. Thank you for joining us, though. Like on a Thursday where it's getting dark, it really means a lot that you guys are here. So, yeah. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Viridiana. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at the Racine Public Library, 104. Yeah. So it is my pleasure to introduce Oscar to you tonight, who graciously reached out to us to host this event here at the library. So kudos to Oscar. So I'm going to be a little bit formal because he deserves the honor today. And I'm going to call him Mr. Mireles in my introductory. So Mr. Mireles is an acclaimed poet and editor with work published in over 50 outlets. Since I last checked, maybe it has been more since then. He has received multiple grants for his literary contributions, completed a fellowship at the Vermont Studio Center, and served as Madison's Poet Laureate from 2016 to 2017. In addition to his literary accomplishments, he founded Latinos Organizing for Understanding and Development, Aloud, in 2016, and he currently serves is the executive director of Omega School, which offers adult education and GED preparation in Dane County. Among Mr. Mireles' many works, he has published 3 volumes of I Didn't Know There Were Latinos in Wisconsin, capturing years of Latino poetry, essays, memoirs, and fiction. This evening, Mr. Mireles and a group of talented Latino poets will give us Carmen Murguia, Richard Vargas, and Rosa Salinas-Hultman will give us a pre-publication reading. These awesome people will give us a pre-publication reading from the upcoming 4th volume of this powerful series. Please join me in welcoming Oscar.
Well, let's give a big round of applause for Viviana for all her work. And so when I asked her, she said yes right away. So I'm trying to get all the women in my life to say yes right away. But I appreciate it. That's right. That's the way it should be. Well, this is probably the 10th time I read here at the Racine Library now. So this is my hometown. And it's changed a lot, but it's also stayed the same because I still have a lot of friends that are still here, and I'm glad that you're here with us tonight. It means a lot to me, so especially on a cold, dark Thursday night in Racine. So the reason for this book is I published my first book in 1985, and I just felt that when I had my book in print, it kind of changed my life. It made me take my own writing more seriously, and I was afraid to call myself a poet. I always thought poets were those other kinds of people that I never wanted to be, and having the book kind of made me take it more seriously. And I said, well, how can I give that to other people? And that's why I decided to do the anthology, is to have other people get published for the first time and feel that joy and feel that spark and a little immortality, because I keep seeing those Planet of the Apes movies and they find a book, and one day they're going to find my book in that movie. So what we're going to do today, we have some poets who want to come up and share some of their poems. And first one, we're going to bring up Carmen Murguia, and I know her father. So her father worked at Centro Hispano in Milwaukee, and she's become a friend, and we want to have her come up and share some of her poems. Let's big round of applause, Carmen.
Thanks, Oscar. It's a great honor to be here tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight on this beautiful fall evening. It's crisp, it's dark, and it's a perfect setting for a poetry set. I'm going to open with El Bastón. And it's interesting how this one came to me. I happened to be at work, and all of a sudden, I took a glance, like my cane had fallen over, and I went to pick it up. And as I picked it up, I was like, oh, I feel a poem coming. And it's crazy how that happens. You just never know, because poetry is my life, and you just never know when it's going to come. So you got to go with it. El bastón. Dios es mi bastón. Yes, God is my cane. Dios me lleva when I can no longer carry myself. Dios es mi bastón. Yes, God is my walking stick. Dios me ayuda when there are times I am unable to help myself. Yes, God is my reed. Dios me levanta just when I need him to lift me up physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Yes, God is my shaft. Dios es mi bastón, and he does not allow me to fall en cualquiera forma. Yes, God is my rod. Dios me sostiene when I am wobbly, feel like I'm about to fall, when my balance is weak and my knees can no longer steady me. God steadies me. I need not be afraid. After all, Dios es mi bastón. Thank you. Does everybody remember what a boombox looks like? Okay, so now picture me standing in the rain with a boombox on my shoulder. This was an entitled Genevieve. Patiently waiting, heart beating, stomach tight, feeling all right, my best black Talso Alba button of faded blue jeans. I'd be outside your job with a boombox in the rain, loudly playing La 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 means I love you by Tierra, until you came to the window. In light blue scrubs at the part they sang, let me hold you in my arms, girl, and fill me with your charms. I'm sure that you will see. Rain on my face and hands holding onto that boombox as if it was my last chance to prove my love to you. And suddenly, you touched the window, palm wide, and smiled that smile of reassuring tenderness that I was the one for you. And just like that, when the song ended, you went back to your night shift and I walked away singing, didn't I blow your mind this time, didn't I? That's for Genevieve. All right. So this next one is called La Historia de Rodolfo Rudy El Pájaro Carvajal. This one was commissioned. A friend of mine, Andrea Mendez Barusha, called me and said, Carmen, my best friend's father died. And she wants to say some words at the funeral, but can't get them out. Will you help her? Will you write a poem? And I was like, sure. And she's in San Antonio, Texas. And so we Zoomed, and I wrote this piece by interviewing her about her father. And it came, and she loved it. And she said, Carmen, my mother loved it. You captured him. And so this is La Historia de Rodolfo Rudy El Pájaro Carvajal. The native son of Eagle Pass, Texas, born to his beloved Alejandro y Guadalupe, Rodolfo Rudy El Pájaro, the bird, Carvajal, lived to love others sin condiciones of their circumstances. He fed, he helped, he guided, he gave his all with calloused and rough hands in the migrant fields of Idaho, where he dreamt big dreams. And in Berta Alicia Olivares, born and bred directamente from Coahuila, Mexico, he fell in love amidst soil and land. Farm workers and landowners, they toiled those sueños, those dreams together. Y juntos, con el amor más profundo, they created Lisa and Susie in warm homes from Califas to Florida and ultimately San Antonio, filled with laughter and strictness and the aroma of barbacoa and menudo and tamales every domingo. It was his larger-than-life humor and straightforwardness that made Rudy true to himself. A lover of all things constructed with his own hands, plumbing, laying sheetrock, construction, and tile work, and the capacity of a third-grade education. El Pájaro made it all worthwhile. Bien conocido as everybody's best friend, Rudy was seen around town in his camioneta roja, his pride and joy, listening to Chuck Berry's The Wanderer, holding his Bertha ever so close. He was más mexicano que americano because his wife, his cheerleader, his back of 53 years, and with her sensual hand in his cheek, acariciando hers, they danced and danced to the oldies but goodies. Ramon Ayala's Un Rinconcito en el Cielo, a little corner in the heavens, and Los Cadetes de Linares, Prenda Querida. Y en las últimas horas, on those last hours, el doctor lo examinó y encontraron his heart beating strong, porque eso es la historia de Rodolfo Rudy el Pájaro Carvajal. That's his story. Sometimes poems come at 2:30 in the morning and you don't know what to do but get up and start to write. Poem for Mom at 2:30 a.m. Determined. That was your mantra. You were determined to create a safe, warm, loving Mexican-American home for us, no matter what it took. Safe. We were protected by Diosito as we said our prayers by night, at each meal, and in between. You taught us that you and Pop would always be there to keep us safe from harm's way, warm. Even when we didn't have a lot, we always had warm radiators, warm coats, warm hugs and mittens, warm tortillas with butter and sal, made by your warm hands and heart of a lady who kept the house all day, went to church at lunch, waited for us after school with a warm embrace. Loving. This one is the toughest because love meant rules and respeto in the home. Love looked like scolding, then understanding, then telling Pop, then discipline, then a loving hug when I said, I'm really sorry, I won't do it again. Love meant helping us with homework since you were really smart and you knew math and you knew English and science and art, even while you baked and ironed and did laundry. You made time for the five of us. That was love. Love sounded like Captain and Tennille, Gladys Knight, the Carpenters, Monday through Friday, and Javier Solis, Vicky Carr, Little Joe on the weekends. You taught us the words and the dances so effortlessly. Yes, Mom, you were determined to create this life for all of us, a proud Mexican-American familia. That you did. Thank you for your determination. Thank you. Same day, same morning, new poem for Papi at 6:45 a.m. A resilient man who always came back from the most difficult situations one could imagine, discrimination, disappointment, disagreements. And yet you kept going, Pa, stronger than you were before. A fighter for justicia, recursos, jobs, and most of all, education for la gente pobre, el inmigrante, los trabajadores, parents, and the little ones. You stood tall and mighty as a redwood. After all, Pop, I've been to Northern California just like you. And just like you in this beautiful land we were taught to sing, this land is your land, this land is my land. I, too, experienced discrimination, disappointment, and have had disagreements with those who thought our resilience was merely a casualty. When all along, Pop, it was our armor for building our confidence, our self-respect, our love for community. And it was that resilience that kept you going. And you had to look for a brighter tomorrow. And educated men in life and on paper, no one could question you, deny you, disrespect you. Even though they tried, they could never penetrate your heart of gold. No, They could never touch you, a man of great integrity, nor would they try to question how your beautiful mind worked. Resilient, you, Pop, you showed me, taught me, and instilled in me how a proud Mexican man from a small town with a big name, Tangancícuaro, Michoacán, Mexico, can become a citizen and make your dreams a reality in this country of ours. Thank you, Pop. Two more?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Okay, everybody, beach life. This one I wrote, I love the beach. I love the beach. I love the way the sand feels. I love looking out on the waters, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, you name it. I love the beach. It just calls to me. Beach life. No more struggle, no more strife. Sand at my feet, keep me feeling that everything's all right. Got clean gas in my tank, healthy food on my table, a Zen roof over my head, a safety net with no holes. Everything's all right. Big blue skies look like heaven above, and even though my parents are gone, I'm not alone. I've got Ma and Pa watching over me, and that keeps me feeling everything's all right. Sun on my face, nothing can replace. Familia I created, familia I'm related. Together we are one. Connection, affection, direction, reflection. No more drama, no more fights, no more sleepless nights, and everything's all right. Big lake water, I dive in deep to God's gift of nature. This feeling is so real. Nothing else can appeal to this feeling that everything's all right. Thank you. Everything's all right. All right, I'm going to close with an untitled piece. This one is untitled. It's brand new. And it's one of my favorites because it's a new feeling. I moved in August to my first place in a year since my mom passed. And she passed last May of Alzheimer's. And I took care of her for 11 years. And so I was lost for a year. I was lost before then, but I was really lost over the past year. And I think I finally got it together this past summer. Something just clicked. And then in August, I found a place. Looking out into a brand new morning from my east side window, all I could see are endless possibilities. To breathe in fall colors and changes and breathe out last season's worries and disappointments. To inhale crisp air and new ideas. And exhale humidity and any toxicity. This new season brings on healing. Physically, my knee, my entire body. Mentally, replacing negative self-talk with loving messages. Emotionally, center my mind and my heart. Spiritually, align myself with God in this vast universe that strengthens all of me inside and out. Join me on this journey to renew, to refresh, to reawaken, rejuvenate, and to realize that we all need a fall season in our lives. On this amazing path, no matter what fall looks like in your parts of the world, it is a new time, a new place, and for some of us, a new window. Gracias. Thank you so much. Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
That's another round of applause for Carmen. So Rosa, you ready for one poem?
I don't have anything with me. You didn't tell me.
Well, I was going to tell you, but I didn't know you were coming. Yeah. And are you Elkid? Is she Elkid? No. Oh, sorry. Okay, don't worry. Well, then we're going to bring up Richard Vargas. He came to Madison a couple of years ago during the pandemic, and then we had a mutual friend, Carlos Cumpian from Chicago, and he said, connect, and we've become friends, and he's an amazing writer. He's every year publishes a new book, and he inspires me to keep going. I've been doing other stuff, but now I'm happy to get back to to my poetry. So, Richard Vargas.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words, Oscar. So let's see, family friendly, but there are no little kids here, so maybe I can read a few other poems I wasn't going to.
Shut the door. Just in case one of those little kid sneaks in here.
So I'm going to start out with a poem called The End of Superman. And I wrote these poems back in, this was published in 2014, but it seems like recently they're now relevant again, which is too bad. The End of Superman. No, it wasn't some devious plot put into action by his nemesis, the pesky Lex Luthor, or a stray meteor shower of that lethal poison, green kryptonite. It happened on the Larry King Show. During an interview, someone called in, wanted his opinion on how to rid the country of all the lazy, dirty illegals invading the good old USA, and why hadn't he done something about it already? Superman hemmed and hawed, saying he didn't think it was a legitimate threat to national security. And besides, from an economic standpoint, it made no sense. And people everywhere have a right to pursue a better way of life, since borders don't detract from the fact that we're all human beings with the same wants and needs. The caller spoke again, this time sounding a lot like Glenn Beck, until he cleared his throat to lower his voice, as he asked Superman why he was going soft on criminals, and that maybe he wasn't our protector of truth, justice, and the American way after all. Superman tried to get a word in, but then the caller did the unexpected. He asked Superman to prove his citizenship. And by the way, wasn't he from another planet? Which would truly make him an illegal alien if there ever was one. Superman had nothing to say, and after the show turned himself into the nearest ICE detention center, where he now sits with the other detainees, becoming invisible, fading away. This one is titled The Road Taken. They had seen this before, the name calling, the pointing of fingers, the feverish waving of the flag and signs telling them to go home. So they did, where they watched us look for new reasons to blame for the fall of our empire, while the roads crumbled, the bridges sagged and collapsed as weeds pushed through the many cracks in the pavement. They heard us cry while our crops rotted in the fields because we had become too lazy and soft to pick our own lettuce and grapes, strawberries and onions. They shook their heads when we started fighting amongst ourselves. The clouds of acrid smoke and the sound of gunfire floated over the razored wire wall and that invisible line in the dirt we once patrolled diligently with flying drones and neo-Nazi patriots. Then the walls of inclusion became the great walls of exclusion, as all the brown people were kicked out, then the black people, soon followed by anyone deemed to be not white enough to stay behind. Last but not least were God's chosen people, befuddled and confused because they thought they had finally passed over to the right side of the color line. Then all that remained in the United States of America, besides the angry, the old, and the white, were a bunch of dried up golf courses and an abundance of vacant Walmarts. It was then that they decided it was safe to return with their lawnmowers, paintbrushes, bags of cement, mops, and buckets. The country was a bigger mess than before, and once again, there was plenty of work for everyone.
Wow.
Sorry?
When did you write that?
Back in 2013, 2014.
It's so relevant today.
Yeah, it is.
That we went back.
I know. This is called the Thanksgiving poem, since we're almost there. The day after I get word I'll be out of work for 12 days before Christmas and read on the internet that the big bonuses are back on Wall Street, I get a check in the mail for a poem published in someone's anthology. They thank me for the poem, tell me I can purchase extra copies at half price, and if I don't want the honorarium, feel free to write void across the check and return it. Hint, hint. It's just enough for a really good cigar or a 12-pack of decent beer. Enough to remind me this is as close as I'll ever get to making a living in the poetry biz, and that the punches will keep on coming as long as I keep rolling. So if it's okay, I'd like to cash that check, because sometimes the difference between doing something stupid and getting locked up for a long time or staying alive to write another poem is $15. I have some weird dreams sometimes, and they initiate poems.
Yes.
And this was one of them. It's called I Dream. I'm sitting by myself alone in that big place they have in airports where people wait for their luggage. The sounds of moving metal announces the first pieces to come down the ramp and onto the conveyor belt. But instead of oversized gym bags with matching suitcases, I see and smell bodies burned charcoal black, stiff as the dried branches on a dead cottonwood tree. Others are bloody raw like strange cuts of meat not available at your local butcher shop. Their disfigured faces are frozen with mouths gaped open. I know these dead, read about them every day on the internet news, and watch TV news clips that only show me the cleanup after the Big Bang. While sorrow and shame cling to my throat like a chunk of salty green yellow phlegm. This is my dream of witness. If you haven't had yours, brace yourself. You will soon. So this is from my dad, a childhood memory. Watching my old man kick someone's ass. I was 3, maybe 4, looked out the screen door. There he was across the street. People were standing in a circle. He and another man were in the middle. My old man must have been in his early 20s, lean, hard, and mean, fresh out of the 82nd Airborne. The other guy was soft, a pendejo who never left the block. My dad was throwing his shit left and right. His opponent was backing up into the crowd, losing his footing, but afraid to take his eyes off the crazy cholo coming at him. It was over before it really started. My old man, victorious and cocky, I remember he looked from across the street, saw me standing in the doorway. Our eyes met, and I knew he had just shown me something important. I took a mental snapshot, so I'd always carry the moment with me. Now, when I want to strike out, unleash the blow we all have within us, I write a poem, and I know he would approve. And this one is for somebody who really had an important role in my life as a child. This is called Rock and Roll Aunt. I was only 5 or 6, but you used to give me carte blanche with your 45s and RCA portable record player when we came over to visit. In your room, laid out on your bed, I'd listen to the Everly Brothers, Chubby Checker, Bobby Rydell,
Richie Valens, Frankie Avalon, and the King, whose sultry voice made me want to get up and move in mysterious ways. You always knew the latest dances too, the Watusi, mashed potato, the twist. On Saturday nights, you took your turn strolling between the other kids, all swaying in unison to the sounds of Art LeBeau's rock and roll shows and what would one day be known as the East Side Sound. Your hair teased high, coy pink lips, and hypnotic Maybelline eyes. The boys with dark skin and slicked hair stood in line for a chance to dance with you. An angel from the other side of the tracks. Many moons have passed. Now you're in ICU, fading in and out between cancers, steady hunger, and the drugs they give you to numb the pain. The miles between us are many, but if I could be there at your side, I thank you for planting the seeds of teenage rebellion in my tiny heart. Whisper in your ear how after all these years, that timeless question of your youth will finally be answered. Who wrote the Book of Love? I went to school in middle school in Paramount, California, and our mascot was a Viking. So when we played football, we were known as the Vikings. So this is called Chicano Viking, Paramount Junior High, 1969. Henry Obregon was hardcore, a ninth grade loner with an icy gaze and the quiet bulk of someone you just knew you never wanted to run into in a dark alley. Both Loco Arios, PV-13, and Dog Patch knew enough to leave him alone. Word had it that Henry kept a gun in his locker. On the weekends, he hung out with a real gang from Montebello or somewhere in East LA. No one fucked with Henry. No one could figure out why he attended our school, and no one had the balls to ask. We were all surprised when he showed up to try out for the football team. Henry didn't know the game, but could run straight ahead the way a fire plug shoots out of a cannon, a puff of fiery smoke in its aftermath. It always took more than two guys to take him down. He dragged them for every yard of open field he could get until they pinned him under a mound of sweaty, stinky moans and grunts. The sharp cracking sound made when helmets and pads are thrown hard against each other announced Henry hitting the dirt and weeds of our sorry excuse for a football field the Cash Poor School District had not watered for months. As his stocky legs kept kicking and pushing him forward for an extra inch or two, the coaches did the obvious, made him our starting fullback, even though Henry never memorized a single play. Ventura Espitia, our QB, would call the play in the huddle, then look at Henry and tell him what hole to run into, the numbered spaces between the center and the guards, or the guards and the tackles. I was the left guard. I shared the one hole with the center on my right, and the 3 hole with the tackle on my left. I learned real quick that if Henry was carrying the ball through the 1 or the 3 hole, I'd better block fast and hard or prepare myself for the impact of Henry's helmet blasting into my backside or his cleats biting into my ankles and calves as he ran over me. It only happened a couple of times. After that, I blocked for Henry with fierce desperation. No lie, I would have made Vince Lombardi sit up and take notice. We won more games than we lost. Henry was our workhorse, our go-to guy when we had to have 2 to 4 yards to keep the drive alive. After the game, we would talk shit in the shower, the sons of blue-collar families enjoying one glorious and all too brief taste of what it felt like to be on the winning side for a change. Last time I saw Henry, wearing pressed khakis, spotless white t-shirt, long sleeve Pendleton draped over his arm, walking home alone, doing his warrior strut down Rosecrans Avenue. Here's to Henry Obregon, a cold-looking vato who knew how to play a good game of football. Yeah, I don't know what happened to Henry. What, one more? Okay. Chiefs, well, no, 2019, 2020. The summer of 2020, I think 2021, there was a small town in New Mexico, Deming, New Mexico, which is like 40 miles from the border, 14,000 population. They made national news. They set up a processing center for asylum seekers who at that time were being dropped off by the Border Patrol at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning at neighboring towns, just kicked off the bus and told to fend for themselves. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know if they were still in the U.S. They were knocking on doors, knocking on churches. So the fire department in Deming said, we got to do something about this. So they converted an old airport hangar on the outskirts of town where the old fairgrounds are into a processing center. They got cots, they set up a kitchen, they set up portable showers, they had screening for health screenings and computer banks, and they would, as soon as they were dropped off, they'd start looking for sponsors and then get them on a bus or a train or whatever to get them to their sponsor. People were being turned over like within 24 hours. It was amazing. So I was down there doing a book tour that summer, and I thought, I need to go down there and just put in some time and see what's going on. This poem is called Labor of Love. The volunteer coordinator gives me a tour of the makeshift processing center, an old airplane hangar converted with Red Cross cots and folding chairs. A mishmash of computers on rickety plastic tables, pallets of bottled drinking water occupying space in a corner of the building. Asylum seekers dumped by the Border Patrol at 2 a.m. in front of a McDonald's in a neighboring town are taken in, provided resources to find sponsors, a place to shower and rest, receive basic medical screenings, 3 meals a day, eventually given rides to a bus station or airport. The older kids are kicking soccer balls outside with some of my fellow volunteers. The little ones stay inside, sit in the roped-off area just for them, busy with crayons, coloring books, and toys, a safe place where they return to being children with their universal need to play. My first assigned job? To sort through a mixed-up mess of donated clothing, a mountain of onesies, toddlers' Toy Story shorts, extra-large men's t-shirts, 10-year-old dresses from Sears, and Grandma's moldy Christmas sweaters. It's mundane but necessary work, so I jump in, start separating by age and gender, becoming lost in the act of folding. I hardly notice the small figure kneeling beside me, age 6 or 7. Her delicate and nimble hands hold up items from the pile set aside for babies. Each article of clothing inspected with gentle care and reverence. My heart swells as she enacts motions learned from who knows where, creating a tidy and meticulous stack of infant wear. She looks up at me, a granddaughter I never had. Her dark brown eyes meet mine and ask if this is all right. While wondering about all the beauty, all the horror this precious little being has witnessed, I nod my approval while wishing my sparse and rarely used Spanish vocabulary wasn't so elusive right now. Then out of nowhere, words come. Muy bien, mija. Smiling, she runs off to rejoin her mother. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
One more round of applause for Richard Vargas. You know, as I'm sitting in the audience, you know, I've done hundreds of poetry readings, but each time when you sit and you listen, you know, it brings back the humanity in us. It reminds us that we're part of a bigger picture, and with words and images, it takes you there. It takes you there, and I think we don't take enough time to kind of listen to others. And you know, my brother Carlos is here, and I remember my first poetry reading. He bring a poet named Tigre, and I just remember just listening to him read. I just went somewhere, and might have been because I was doing some other stuff, but I did go somewhere, and had a little humor in there. But that's the person that inspired me to become a poet. That I did. He found his voice, and I needed to start the journey to find my voice. So, and next we want to bring up. I found one of her poems, and we're going to bring up Rosa Salinas-Hultman. Rosa, come on up. And Rosa and I went to college together, and she's been a long time. And I broke her jaw when she was little.
He broke my jaw when I was 7. Now, I want to say that, you know, I haven't read this in a long time. So forgive me if I'm kind of rusty. And this is actually a two-parter, but I will read El Señor Sandoval. The Wisconsin wind was blowing the colorful fallen leaves around Señor Sandoval's backyard. He stood in the autumn sunshine, slowly looked around, and wondered, in his loneliness, could he have changed his life if he had tried? He was a widower, had been for many years now. Most of his compadres were dead, and sometimes he thought to himself that it should be his turn soon. Or better said, he wished it would be his turn soon. Mind you, he reflected, on the other hand, I like living by myself, not having to hear anybody telling me what to do. He had had enough of that. El Señor Sandoval had lived in his house for more than 50 years. He bought it from a man who let him buy it on the rent-to-own basis. It was in a good neighborhood. His sons needed to live somewhere that would give them a fair chance in this life. He didn't want them to go through life slaving and moving from state to state, never knowing if they would have a job the next day. He had worked since he was a barefooted little boy, polishing shoes and selling twigs for the chimenea, the open fireplaces where the poor would do their cooking. His mother moved his family to Laredo after his father had left them. Helping his mama take care of his brothers and sisters meant that he didn't have much time to go to school, and he liked school. He was proud in a way because he had learned to do so many things, and now he could cook for himself and iron his own clothes. He could fix cars and rewire houses when his compadres needed help. Even if those days were gone, his fond memories were not. He liked working in the restaurants, but didn't like being a presser or working in the fields, though he did anything and almost everything to keep the money coming in for his family. 8 boys his wife had given him. The youngest one died almost newborn. It made him sad to think about it. After he had picked up his wife from the hospital, she had decided that they would sleep in separate rooms. He still felt the embarrassment over the whole thing. She finally let him sleep in the same room, only because there was nowhere else to sleep in the tiny house with all the kids, but he was never to come near her again. "Are you all right, Grandpa?" he heard someone ask all of a sudden. It was one of his nietos. Without him hearing a sound, the boy was standing next to him. It startled him. He was so caught up in his memories of his lonely life. "Are you all right? What are you doing out here in the cold?" "I was going to rake," El Señor Sandoval said, without even thinking. "My dad wanted me to come and check on you. I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" His grandchild continued to ask. "No, mijo. I'm okay. I just went to the store." "Gramps, you're not supposed to drive." And the grandson shook his head. "You're so stubborn." They said their goodbyes, and again El Señor Sandoval started strolling among the fallen leaves. He held his hands together in back of him, wandered slowly away, and continued to think about the woman he had married. She was a tall, handsome woman. Truth be told, she was taller than he was by a few inches. He had met her when he went to Wisconsin, or got to Wisconsin, to work in the fields. His friends were staying in Wisconsin and Illinois to try to get work in the factories and foundries. He smiled to himself, remembering how his buddies and him went to all the dances. It was at the Memorial Hall. The first dance he went to, it was there he saw her. He entered with the guys. There she was sitting at the table with her parents. She maybe wasn't the prettiest, but the most sensible, and he liked that. Lucky for him, he smiled to himself, almost laughing at this time. Her parents accepted him. "Oh, what a fool I was," he said out loud to the wind. The other guys didn't dare approach the table. They had heard stories about the powerful families of the city, and she belonged to one of them. Even then, she would take command of a room. She would walk in as if she owned it. She knew who to be friends with and who were no good. On the factory floor, they were all the same, but she let him know that she didn't like him associating with certain people. She had many comadres and had people over at the house all the time. They listened to her and asked her for advice. She was like a saint to them. He hung his head. If they only knew, he thought. La Señora Sandoval, the saint. Don't ever cross her, because you will regret it, people would say. His compadres always gave him a hard time for not controlling his vieja. She made trouble for them at home. What could he do? She was the one who wore the pants in the family, and her boys, they were angels. Right. If she only knew, well, maybe she did, but didn't want to see how chiflados they were and still are. She made all the rules, and he stayed away from her, them, and anything else she decided that was not his business. He wasn't getting much raking done, and the wind had finally chilled him so that his whole body was shaking. Was it the wind, or was it the loss of the one woman that had made him feel like he was worth something? He stayed away from his wife, but looked for someone who would give him the love and affection that he really needed and wanted. Cold wind, cold heart, Wisconsin became the home he never wanted. She was like the sun that warmed him and made life livable. She would laugh with him, found him funny. They talked about everything and anything. He met her at work. She came up from Texas in the 60s. She was younger, but not by much. The foreman had given him the responsibility of teaching her what was expected of her on the line. They were still doing piecework. She had to work fast. She was as beautiful as her name, Florentina. But everyone called her Paula. Everyone except for him. She was short, and they would joke about getting her a stool to stand on. She was perfect for him. She never talked about her own marriage or life outside of work. One day, he came into the house after helping a compadre with his car. As usual, the women were in the kitchen, laughing and telling secrets, chismeando. There, almost against the wall, there she was. He could feel his face turn red. He got hot, sweaty. He couldn't look at her. If he did, everyone would know how he felt about her. What was she doing there? Come in, his wife said in a fake, loving way. I want you to meet someone. She started working with the others, the other comadres at the factory. Have you seen her? He recognized a few of them from work, never thinking that they would bring her to his house. Well, see, we work together. I have been trying to teach her the ropes. She's kind of short. They all laughed, and he left. He wanted to cry. Why did she come? Did everyone know? He always wondered. She started working third shift. It was like she left him for another. She would touch his arm when she talked with him. He could still feel it after all these years. She would let him talk, wouldn't make him feel stupid. She left him. The sun couldn't warm him today. His stiff joints ached as he climbed the back stairs into the house. He tried to find love again. He was caught acting like a fool at a wedding once. His wife really got at him in front of his friends. He didn't care. He knew what he wanted and tried to get it. The freshly brewed coffee could only warm him so much, and the comfort of his own home could only satisfy him for a while. He knew this as he sat in his favorite chair and fell asleep alone. Yeah. The other half, no, I'm not going to read it. But the woman's story is in here as well. Yeah.
Okay, and here's Rosa. So my older sister called today, and she wanted to know if my parents were born in the United States. So I looked up. I've been doing Ancestry.com, and I found that. And then I looked, and I looked at the birth certificate with my niece, and realized that in this January, my mom would have been 100. Wow. 100 years old. And that many of you in this room I've known for over 50 years. Yeah, so it is. So in that, I'm going to read one poem, and it's about my mother, and it's called "My Mother is a Social Worker Who Works in a Hospital." So my mother had 12 children or 13 children, and then after raising all them, then she went to work. So my mother is a social worker who works in a hospital. She makes daily visits, checks her charts, and shares small talk with the patients as she brightens up their rooms. My mother is a social worker who works in a hospital. She's always the first one at the scene, just like the television doctors, whether in the birthing room, at my niece Amanda's arrival, or on the operating table, medicine's trapdoor. My mother is a social worker who works in a hospital. My mother translates for the Spanish patients, especially after surgery. She touches their fear with words that can heal. My mother is a social worker who works in a hospital. Surprisingly, there is little blood on her pink uniform, just a day's sweat and dirt. You wouldn't know she was a cleaning lady if you looked in her eyes. My mother is a social worker who works in a hospital. Thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have a new book coming out, so if you want to order a copy again, you don't have to give me the money today, but I'll get it at some point. And we want to thank the librarian for hosting us today.
Yeah.
So,
I also want to add that the books are also in our history room, so you can read it out there and view the works themselves.
Okay. Well, one more time, thank you, Viviana.
One more time for Oscar. Yeah.